Welcome to the Ascent podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. This month's episode is a replay from a few years ago with Leah McLean, major market news anchor out of Minneapolis. Leah was super successful from a very young age, anchoring the 5, 6, and 10 p.m. news by the age of 27. Eventually, she went through a lot of life changes, including a divorce that we discuss in this episode. All of it caused her to reevaluate her priorities and change up her career. I just appreciated Leah being so vulnerable and open in sharing her story. This is a great episode on the idea of being intentional and having the courage to change your path. Leah, welcome. Thanks for joining us on Zoom. At least I get to see your face now.
Hey, Joe. Hi. It's nice to meet you virtually.
I kind of think, in a sense, we're kindred spirits. We both went to Christian or Catholic high schools. We both went to Catholic college. You were at St. Thomas in Minnesota, and I went to St. John's, actually. Yeah, so we can still like each other, I think. But
I think we can. You're not. Yeah. You're not the only Johnny I know.
Right.
Where'd you go to high school, though?
Bethlehem Academy in Faribault. Little Catholic school.
Oh, okay. Yep. Gotcha.
I actually graduated with 22 people. That's how little we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But we were, surprisingly, for a little school that could, we were actually really good in sports back in the day.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
My elementary school was Maranatha Christian Academy. Oh, yeah. And when they started showing up in the sports world, I was like, really? This is amazing.
Right.
Well, after I was gone.
Right.
But yeah.
Anyway, we were both actually communication majors too, if you can believe that.
That's right.
Except for
funny.
You become a news anchor and I veer off into finance for some reason, but a little bit different.
I often say if I were smarter, I would have gone into finance.
Right. Well, when did you know that you wanted to become a news anchor?
You know, I think it was always sort of on my radar as a young person that it was something I saw news people. I thought their job was interesting. During the first Gulf War, I remember it was very interesting. I was just so curious watching the reporters who were in the middle of the action. You know, the guy standing on top of the building with the bombs going off behind them. And something about little me thought, wow, I want to be that person who's in the middle of the action.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, my career didn't go in that direction, but that was what first inspired me.
What was the path early on? I know a little bit of your history that you had to move around a little bit, right? Where did you start out?
I did. You know, my career was part just showing up and part luck, really, I guess. My first TV job actually was at Fox 9 here in the Twin Cities. I went to St. Thomas, as you mentioned, and I got a part-time job, kind of like an internship when I was in college, back when it was Channel 29. Oh. And so I worked there. And then when I left town to start my TV career, I went to the first place was Tucson, Arizona, where I worked on the assignment desk. I kind of moved down there on a whim and showed up and knocked on doors and asked for a job. And then ended up, it's true.
Well, you know, speaking of connections there or crossovers, that's where I started.
Yeah?
It was down in Tucson. And
is that right?
Yeah, and I with the same organization, but the issue was they had an office they were opening. You know, being a Minnesotan guy, you were like, let's go down to the desert and check it out, you know, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. When were you there?
Well, I was there 96 through 98, something like that.
Funny. I didn't stay as long as you. I was basically there for the winter. And then I got an opportunity to move up to Oregon, where they have all the seasons, at least in the mountains where I was. And so I moved to Oregon. So I was only in Arizona for 6 months.
And so how do you find your way back then to Minnesota?
So off to Oregon, and then I ended up in Wisconsin. And I didn't like being in Wisconsin. I'm a city girl, and it had more of a small town feel than the other places I'd been. It wasn't working. There was a breakup. There was personal life drama.
Right.
And I just thought, I want to go home. I just wanted to go home. And I thought, I'm going to go back to Minneapolis. I'd never intended to stay here. I think I had this dream of taking on the world. And I just needed to come home. I was early 20s, I guess. And I wanted to come home, and I ended up getting a job at Channel 5. And initially my job at Channel 5 was producing the news 4 days a week and then reporting 1 day a week. The boss was like, I'm not sure about all your experience. You're kind of young. We'll let you do it 1 day a week.
Right.
And I was like, okay, thanks. Thanks, boss, for giving me the chance.
Right.
And then within about a year and a half, I was anchoring the evening newscast. Sort of just worked out that way.
Well, so you have to know this. For Minneapolis, St. Paul, that media market, where does that rank in relation to the rest of the nation?
Oh, yes. The media markets are ranked numerically. Yeah. We're number 15. New York's 1, LA's 2. Right. Then you've got Chicago, Dallas, some other big cities. It changes sometimes, 14, 15, basically.
Is it the idea that if you're going to start out wanting to end up in Minneapolis, that you're going to bounce around for quite a while before you ever get a chance to do something in a major market like that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Although I will say this, the industry is changing. I know you talk to a lot of business leaders. I think sometimes young people who are looking for an opportunity forget that sometimes employers find someone young appealing because they're cheap, right?
Oh, right.
When you come in with less experience, you can't demand as much money.
Yeah, right.
So I do think that's probably... I tell young people that sometimes. I'm like, don't think they're not going to want you. The young people who are asking for job advice. And they're like, well, I'm not sure I'm ready or I have the experience. And I think, if you're good and you're smart, and I think employers are interested in investing people they see potential in, they're willing to take them on. And one of the benefits to the employers is they're probably not that expensive. They don't have to pay someone with less experience as much as they do someone who's spent 20 years in the business.
Got it.
So,
and were you doing the 5, 6, and 10 at that time?
Yes. Actually, if you want the story, it's kind of funny. I'll tell you because I love stories. So I was basically doing a audition for the weekend newscast. So at the time, we had, maybe some of your listeners remember Cindy Bricado, who worked at Channel 5 for a long time.
Yep.
She left and then she came back as we were in a bit of a transition phase. We had some other anchors who'd moved on and we're in kind of a funny transition phase. And basically, we needed people. So Cindy was doing everything by herself. They needed someone to help out. They weren't sure who they were going to have do what, but they also needed people on the weekend. So I thought I was auditioning for the weekend job. And then it was in 2006 and the boss called me in and I was like, oh, great. They're giving me the weekend job. They had like, hey, Leah, when you're done with your, I was working in the morning, come on up to the boss's office. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I sat down and he said, we want you to do the 5, 6, and 10 p.m. newscast Monday through Friday. And I was like, wait, what? I thought we were talking about the weekend.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we're going to have somebody else do that. We're going to have you do the weekday.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting it.
And how old are you
and
at the time?
I just said yes.
Is that 25, 26?
It was my 27th birthday.
27th. God.
It was on my birthday. I always thought that was kind of funny. Yeah.
Got it.
Yes. And it was just, and it's funny because I went from, I'm 40, I'm almost 42 now. And by the time we're listening to this, I'll be 42.
Right.
I went from in that newsroom trying so hard to prove myself and trying to make sure nobody noticed that I didn't know what I was doing to being the senior member and even having some people tell me they were like intimidated by me or whatever. Wow. And it's so funny to look at those two sides of that for me. So when people say that now, like, oh, you've done this, or, oh, I was nervous about talking to you. I'm like, really? I spent such a long time just proving I belonged here.
Right. Well, so
it's kind of funny.
When you go into that profession, the ultimate goal is 5, 6, and 10.
Yeah.
Somebody who's not in that field, I think, wow, I wish those hours could be different. In a sense of, or maybe you're just like, well, that's kind of insignificant because really doing what I do, that's the thing. And that's when people are. And, it's almost like, I don't know if you were going to be in a play or something and you're like, well, yeah, we do the weekends on Saturday night. That's when we do it. I don't know how you felt about that or maybe if it changed due to family or whatever. But I look at that time and I feel like, oh, Friday at 10, it'd be kind of a bummer to be the anchor and run on those, Yeah. So, I don't know. How did you view that?
That's a good question. And it changed over time.
Okay.
As a younger person, that's what I did. I worked.
Right.
And it was fine. It was great. I loved it. It is a great opportunity. It's a fun job. It's exciting. It's interesting. Yeah, you get to be on TV, which how cool is that?
Yeah, right.
But life changes. So I started doing it when I was 27. By my mid-30s, I was married. I had children. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, working every night is really hard. And having, babies who wake you up all night makes you exhausted.
Right.
And I finally decided I couldn't do it. As great as it was, it reached a point of, I just can't keep doing this. And my family's more important than my job. And I needed to find a way, as life continued to change, to not be there every night. And it took a long time to figure out. And I work for the Hubbard family. It's a family-owned company. And they were wonderful to work with me and make it work. I had a moment where I thought, well, I'm going to have to leave if I can't do this. But I loved my job.
Right.
I hated the hours.
Right.
And that was a hard decision, but I kind of got to the point where I thought, well, I'm probably gonna have to do this. But Rob Hubbard is the one who oversees TV in my department, and was great. And said, we're gonna create this new daytime position for you. And they basically created a new role. And it's, sometimes when you make a major change in life, you wonder walking into it, okay, I'm gonna make this big change, but is it actually gonna change what I want? I think there are a lot of people who say, I'm going to go down to part-time, and then they find they work just as many hours and they're getting paid less and they wish they never made the change.
Right.
This change was just as good as I thought it was going to be, and even better. I got to go home in the evening and see my kids. I got to go to after-school activities, participate in the sporting events. Right. And on a personal level of, my own, I got to go see friends and do things. I think part of the reason you and I are talking is I put a Facebook post out there that a lot of people read.
Yes.
About, in the middle of this, my life basically fell apart.
Right.
It's not a joke. And my marriage ended, and it was devastating. But making that work change, I think, really helped a lot of these other things be a little easier to handle.
Was the change before or after your divorce, or was it as a result of, or how did the timing of all that fit together?
It was a part of the discussion before the divorce, but it became really necessary after the divorce. So it was was it a year? It might have been about a year after the divorce that I stepped away from the evening newscast and moved into, by the way, a dayside role. So I work 9 to 5.
Right.
It was a really, really necessary change with all the things that were happening in my personal life. And I'm lucky I was able to make that move.
Did you feel... I'm going to give you a bad analogy. I've worked with NFL players before that there was a contract offered to them and they turned it down, right? And they said, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. Time to move on with my life. And then a year later they say, well, I think I got that wrong. I'd really like to get back in the league, right? And what happens in that space is, well, if you're already somebody who turns down contracts, we're never giving you an opportunity. Now it's forced. You're done.
Yep.
If you have that position that you have in a major market and you come back and say, right now, I don't think I want that. I want to take a step back. Were you nervous? Did it matter? Like that opportunity never comes again. Or if there's some kind of stigma with it that says, yep, we just can't offer her that because she's already walked away. We don't want to take that chance.
Absolutely. Yes. I had so many of those thoughts. Yes, I was worried, like, am I going to miss it? Is it going to be weird seeing someone else do it? Am I going to be jealous? Am I going to miss? There was a news anchor in town who worked at a different station who retired. And I remember hearing him say how much he was going to miss being on TV and having people recognize him. And I remember thinking to myself, really? Because as much as that was fun initially, it wears off. And if I were to walk into Cub Foods and nobody said, hey, that's the lady from the news, it wouldn't hurt my feelings a bit. I'd be fine. So I think everybody has a different level of comfort with that. And I've been surprised because it's been a little more than 2 years now since I stepped away from the evening news. Again, I'm still doing, basically the same job that's in the middle of the day. And, and I'm not the main person. And I got to be honest, I really, truly am fine with it. And I kind of wondered that about myself ahead of time. I thought, am I going to be? Am I a big enough person that I don't need all that? And apparently I am a big enough person.
Fantastic. Well, so when you are the news anchor, even on TV, how often now are you recognized? How do you deal with, I guess celebrity is the right word, right? But like, is it a comfort space for you?
I have friends who love to joke and call me a regional celebrity.
Oh.
Or they tease me about it. It's in Minnesota. There are people who will recognize me as the lady from the news. Oh. And even if I stay in my lesser position for the rest of my career, which frankly would be great for me, I spent 15 years doing the Monday through Friday, 5, 6, and 10 p.m. newscast. Right. So I think there will be an element of Minnesotans who are news watchers who will remember that. Yeah. We all remember a lot of people who we watched for years and years here. So yeah, it is an element of it. but it's not like, it's not like I'm Justin Bieber.
Right, right.
I don't have teenage girls screaming when I show up somewhere.
Right.
It's never been that.
You could still take a regular plane because you're not being mobbed in the airport or something like that, right?
Not in the least. Not in the least, yeah. And Minnesotans are wonderful people, and I think are sometimes friendly and want to stop and say hello. And I'm friendly, I'm talkative, so I'm happy to chat,
Yeah. And speaking of being a regional celebrity and privacy and things along those lines, I was thinking about social media. We're going to take a break for a second, but when we get back, I want to ask you about your approach to social media. Hey there, this is Joe. You know me as the host of this podcast, but did you know that I'm also the co-founder and president of Moxie Wealth Management, a boutique wealth management firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota? My team and I excel at taking complex family and business planning concepts and making our financial advice easy to understand. We recognize the trust that executives and families place in our team and value our role in helping our clients be intentional with their assets. When you partner with Moxie, my team and I focus on creating a plan that encompasses your financial goals and philanthropy, while also understanding how you want your wealth to impact your family and future generations. You can trust our unique expertise to build a thoughtful yet strategic wealth and legacy plan for your future. To learn more about me and my firm, send me an email at joe@moxiewealth.com. That's joe@moxie wealth.com. I'm a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Securian Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Securian Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Moxie Wealth Management is affiliated with North Star Resource Group. I've interviewed, for example, Corey Berry, who's the CEO of Best Buy, and asking her about how she approached social media. Like, how much do you put of your family or whatever is going on, or your pride? Because my thought, if it was any level of celebrity, is that I would almost just not even want to be on at all. How do you view social media?
So I take the same approach as you. If somebody told me I had to give up Facebook tomorrow, that'd be fine.
Right.
I wouldn't miss it. And I was going to say very little. I do no personal Facebook, actually. I post things on my professional page. Okay. And there's, I guess, a tiny bit of personal. Some people I know who, I guess, whatever. Right. But I do Facebook or social media because it's part of the job. We have to have a presence. Mm-hmm. But I try to avoid any controversy. I don't want to get into controversial discussions. Right. And I know some people even have fun with it. Like, some guys will post, "Hey, help me pick a tie today." Right. And I'll post something and then I'll walk away for 2 days and then go back and be like, "Oh, I should respond to people." Yeah. And as far as personal things, I hardly ever post my children. Right. I mean, to the point that they probably show up about once a year. Mm-hmm. And if I do post them, it's like you'll see their backs. Mm-hmm. You don't really see their faces. In part because I feel like it is their lives, and at some point in time, I want them to make the choice about what their own social media presence is. And I will respect other people who make a different choice. And a lot of people do. Right. I think I'm kind of old-fashioned in this way. Mm-hmm. My family and my personal life is generally personal, which is why when I made reference to posting something about my divorce, I wrote a thing about 3 years ago today. Yeah, right. I really never do that. And I think that's why some of the people who follow me were sort of surprised to see it and responded in a wonderful, really kind way. Right. Because it was also, and I was nervous about doing it. I had conversations with a few friends. People post things all the time. Right. But for me, I thought I never really put anything about myself, my own personal life out here. And I thought, is this the right thing to do? Should I do it? Should I not? But there were so many people who I think connected with my message of basically finding a new path and one that you weren't expecting that you'd need to take. Right. To clarify a little bit, yes. You wrote about your divorce and explaining that to everyone because I think maybe the impression was people still thought you were married or people didn't know what was going on, or what was the reason behind it? So some of it might sound a little petty. Yeah, right. I've been divorced for about 3 years, and I did find, and talk about my personal life a little, but I think people assumed that I was married, and I was running into this a lot, that it was, if you Googled me or whatever, it would show a picture of my husband or my children. And it just bothered me that this was the general story out there about me, and it wasn't right. And it was missing this big element. And it also felt like I had to explain it too often, or people were surprised. I thought, I'm just going to put this out here. But there is something cathartic about writing something and sharing something. And I know in the last couple of years, I've been reading so much about this idea of particularly women having it all, balancing their successful careers, their families, and making themselves crazy because it's so overwhelming and it's more than they can handle. And they're shocked that having it all is so incredibly difficult. I thought, I know there are so many other people who are in the same boat as I am and have found themselves on a new path, whether they like it or not. Right. And yet maybe you're shocked to find that that new path isn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. Right. You would never have chosen to have made a change like this. But when it happens, I am a firm believer, whatever it is in your life, and people find themselves at a crossroad for whatever different reasons. COVID has certainly forced that upon many of us. I think we have a choice. Can we turn our negative into a positive and look for a new opportunity in the face of a challenge? Or do we see it as a problem and wallow in this new challenge? Right. For me, it was a major change in life. And I was like, I need to do some self-reflection. And maybe there's a space to help other people through the same thing. Right. Or let them help me. I could use all the help I can get.
And what were you finding? Was there anything in particular that you kept thinking about that drove you to make the change?
Oh, I mean, family life, absolutely. I would have to, and also with my girls going to school. I have two children, both girls. They are 7 and 8 now, so they're about a year and a half apart. When they were little, I'd be home with them all morning. I'd put them down for a nap, and then I'd go to work, and then I'd come back in the evening to put them to bed. But I only had about an hour of time, so it was kind of it was always a little too rushed and always a little too chaotic. And that probably brought more stress into the whole house than needed to be there because I was like, I got to hurry up and do this, which is not a great way to put a child to bed. So that was really tough. I didn't want to leave my children. And I knew when they went to school, I wouldn't see them during the week. If they're done with school at 3:30 in the afternoon and I don't get home from work till 7:30 for an hour, they've done their homework. Right. They've had their dinner. They've everything else. And I was going to miss it all. And I just wasn't willing to miss it all.
So that was the process, though, because, I mean, I'm just picking up as you're talking. Yeah. You do the 5 to 6, you come home, you put the kids to bed, you go back to work, and then you do the 10. That's how it worked.
Right. Yes. Sorry, I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. I made it a lot.
And it's exhausting.
Yeah. It sounds like you had the change in your mind, and then all of a sudden, boy, you really got a life change pushed on you that you had to pick up the pieces and do something. What do you say to that person who is they're not uncomfortable enough? Oh,
that's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, that you need the change, but there's no big push. Yeah. I think for a lot of people right now in COVID, because for all of us, our lives are disrupted. Right. I think there are a lot of people who are going to re-enter the world in a new way. And I've been having that discussion with a lot of friends lately too, and married friends I have a girlfriend who talked about before COVID, she said she and her husband were at different sporting events every night separately with their 2 kids. Right. She's like, we never sat down and had family dinner. And they both have busy careers and busy kids involved in sports. And she said, after this thing's over and we're going back, I'm not going to step into our old life. I'm going to step into a new situation. And whether that is something that requires a career change or a change in the way you do things with your family, it seems to me there are a lot of people who have the opportunity right now they didn't realize they had before COVID to make a change and do it differently when everything opens up, when life goes back to normal. What is the normal you choose? Because I think you're right. Sometimes life goes along and you don't realize you're making all these small choices. And next thing you know, you've built a whole life. Right. And sometimes we don't take the time to step back and say, is this the life I want? Right. Is this the life God wanted me to be living? And if it's not, maybe you make a change or maybe you don't. I don't know. Right. I guess and sometimes small things happen and build up and sometimes you just keep on plodding down the same path.
I think there's a little bit of a process of learning to say no. And I imagine with your career, that was obviously a big saying no, that I want to give back the career that I have. What do you think about that process of decluttering and saying no? Is that tough for you?
Tough, yes, but so satisfying and reaffirming. I think for me, there's something liberating about letting everything go. the personal life I thought I was building, not going the way I wanted it to. Mm-hmm. I remember telling a friend, like, when your worst nightmare comes true and then you live the next day and you realize you're still breathing and you realize everyone's okay and they're going to be okay, it's so liberating. I feel like I can be more bold in what I say. I can be more relaxed about what's going to happen if something goes wrong, because I feel like the worst thing that could go wrong for me did go wrong. Mm-hmm. And I'm still here and my kids are still here. Frankly, I don't ever think divorce is the right thing for kids.
Sure.
Just put that out there too.
Right.
For me, I don't. It's too bad for kids. Yeah. It's and they get thrown into it and it's a shame. But they are good kids, and my goal as their mother is to help them see the challenges in life as opportunities and overcome them. We want to build children into grown-ups who are full of empathy and kindness and are decent citizens. And I don't think they necessarily become those things by having everything easy all the time. So as a good parent, hopefully we can instill those values in our children through good times and through bad times and help them learn those lessons. That's what I'm trying to do with my kids. But yes, as far as my career changing, which was my choice, and I'm so glad I made the choice. Mm-hmm. My personal life falling apart wasn't my choice, but having everything that I thought I was planning on not panning out the way I wanted it to was the most liberating experience of my life. Wow.
That's fantastic. So what would you say to the women out there that are fighting on that work-life balance scenario?
Well, first of all, I'm so hopeful right now for them. I do think that as terrible as COVID-19 has been and all the damage it's done to our world, I'm really hoping that it's given us this pause, that we can step out of it and be more aware of what we're creating next time. Mm-hmm. And I think for men and women, but honestly, I think a lot of times women do carry more of the load when it comes to the family life. Mm-hmm. And maybe that will shift a little bit more. Maybe that will be something that shifts now that people have all been in their home together more than they ever were before. Mm-hmm. And maybe this shift to more working from home will have more of an impact. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and give people more flexibility. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. But I do think it's too bad that a lot of women who choose their families and pull themselves out at probably when they're at their highest earning potential too, mm-hmm. never really get back into that fast track they were in before. Mm-hmm. I think they get shifted into another lane. And I really think that's too bad. And it'd be nice if there were more opportunities for women to make a choice to positively impact their family. And even if that means stepping away for a short time from the career fast track, mm-hmm. it'd be nice if they could get back into that fast lane. Right. It just seems like once you step out, it's really hard to step back in. Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible for everyone, but we hear that story a lot.
Right. I think of just other countries that have mm-hmm. areas of the world that have holiday where you're mandatory have to be off for 30 days out of the year, right? And you get paid fully for it. Or when you have children, you get 12 months off paid, all mm-hmm. of those kind of things.
Yep.
There's so many. Yeah. In America, we just seem so hard driving to do more, to be more, to get more, to, all of that kind of stuff. Yes. Which brings to mind another idea for me. Obviously, you probably walk away from a certain amount of money too, right? From an income and a salary. If you're doing these primetime mm-hmm. gigs and you're not, how did you wrestle that?
Yes, I did. It changed my income. Again, I'm really lucky that my employer was as kind and generous to mm-hmm. me as they were, because I don't think that always happens that way for everyone. Mm-hmm. Yes, there was a change, but I wasn't left destitute.
Yeah, sure.
But also, it came right around the same time as my divorce. So I went from a 2-family income to a 1 adult income. Yeah. So I just kind of buckled down, really. I made I moved and found myself in a more affordable place, and I made some good choices. Frankly, I'm kind of a cheap person, so it wasn't that hard for me to really just make some good choices there. And then took about a year or two just to kind of figure it out. Like, where am I? I saved a bunch of money just in case, because I wasn't quite sure how everything would pan out. but just tried to be really conscientious.
I think maybe part of where I was linking the money is sometimes your ego gets attached to what you do for a living.
Oh, it's so true.
Right. When I look at your situation, part of the things that I really do think is cool about it is that you were able to separate that. I don't know if it's a male thing or a female thing or whatever, but I just feel like it would be hard to say, I've got the great gig, I want to walk away from that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm the person who walks down the street and everybody knows who I am, and now maybe I won't, that kind of thing,
Yeah. I think you're right. I think men would have a hard time letting go of that. I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in different stages of life too, that I think men wrap more of their self-worth into their career than women do. I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying that.
You don't offend me.
I think it's true. And I think for women, maybe our self-worth is a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to say it's better how we work that out. But yes, I think it's the career's part of it, but it's not everything. And again, like I said, I put a lot of work into this, to be totally honest. I did the therapy and did the self-reflection, like where am I going wrong? What can I do better? And then really tried to dig in and make some of those changes and look at the things. I tried to really look at the role honesty plays in my life. And I read some things about like parents teaching their children to lie in these really small ways that don't look like a big deal. And I had one day where I told my daughter that this was a couple of years ago when Toys R Us was still around. Right. We drove by and she wanted to go. And I said, I don't think it's open right now. And, a small lie. That's okay. No big deal. We don't have time to stop. And she looks over and she's like, I see cars in the park. The kid's 3. She's like, I see cars in the parking lot. I'm pretty sure it's open.
Right.
And I thought, why did I think I needed to lie to her?
Right.
Maybe I need to make a better choice here because I'm teaching her that it's okay to lie when you think the situation is right. Why couldn't I have just said, we don't have time to stop right now. I'm sorry if that's disappointing for you. Right. Anyway, but the point of that is, I think there are so many areas in life where we need to be willing to look at ourselves and say, where am I missing out? Where am I doing this wrong? And have an honest look at that. And I think that's going to help us in our personal lives and our careers and whatever else. I might be totally off course here. I don't know.
Well, so you've done, it sounds like certainly in the last handful of years or maybe longer, you've done the work. When you look out forward, what are you the most excited about now?
I'm really excited about who my children are becoming and getting to know them better. They're 7 and 8 years old and they're becoming real people with opinions and thoughts, and they're funny and they're clever. And I'm just excited that I get to spend more time with them and be a part of their lives in a really special way. And I'm excited to see what comes next. I plan to live to be 100 years old. I'm only 42 right now. And I love reading stories about authors who write best-selling novels, and they do it in their 40s. And I have to wonder, what did they do for their whole lives before that? They had a whole nother life before they became some world-renowned best-selling author. I'm not working on a novel. Maybe I should be. But I'm aware there are new opportunities. And I guess I'm not as scared that there may be something completely different and new in the future. And when it appears, we'll see what it is. And hopefully I'm ready for it.
Leah, I really want to thank you for sharing today. I really enjoyed your story. I had a lot of fun. I wish we could go longer, actually, but this has been great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right, great. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Leah McLean, news anchor for KSTP Channel 5 in the Twin Cities. You can find her on the midday and afternoon newscasts and hanging out with her daughters most evenings. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.